The woman standing beside the damaged Bentley thought she had just collided with an old truck. She had no idea she had just crashed into the last secret her father ever left behind. The late afternoon sun hung low over the Colorado foothills, turning the highway into a ribbon of gold. Traffic moved steadily through the small mountain town of Redstone Creek, where people still waved from pickup trucks and knew their neighbors by name. Caleb Hayes was driving home from a long day at the repair shop, his weathered Ford F-150 humming along the two-lane road. The truck was nearly 20 years old, its paint faded, and its mileage well past what most people would consider reasonable. But Caleb had never cared much about appearances. At 42, he had learned that character lasted longer than chrome. In the passenger seat sat a grocery bag filled with supplies for his daughter, Lily. She was 10 years old, bright-eyed, curious, and the center of his world. Every decision Caleb made began and ended with her. The truck rolled toward a stoplight near the center of town. Everything seemed ordinary. Then a black Bentley appeared from a side street. The luxury sedan turned sharply, its driver distracted for only a moment. Tires squealed softly. Brakes engaged. A dull crunch echoed through the intersection. Caleb's truck rocked slightly. The light turned green. Everything went quiet. The driver's door of the Bentley swung open. A woman stepped out wearing a tailored cream-colored coat and designer sunglasses. Her posture was confident, her expression irritated. Evelyn Sterling was used to solving problems quickly. She managed billion-dollar investments before breakfast and negotiated corporate acquisitions before lunch. Delays were inconveniences. Mistakes were expensive. And at that moment, all she could see was the damage to her car. She marched toward the truck. "Are you serious?" she demanded. "Do you have any idea what this car is worth?" Caleb stepped out slowly. His denim shirt was faded from years of work. Grease stains marked his sleeves. He looked more like a mechanic than someone who belonged in a conversation with a billionaire heiress. Yet his expression remained calm. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "the important thing is that nobody got hurt." "Nobody got hurt," Evelyn repeated. "Look at my car." Caleb glanced at the Bentley. Then he looked back at her. Cars can be repaired. The answer only frustrated her more. Around them, a gentle mountain breeze carried the scent of pine trees through the air. A few pedestrians paused to watch. The courthouse clock chimed 4 times in the distance. Evelyn folded her arms. "You're surprisingly calm for someone who just caused an accident." Caleb opened his mouth to answer. Before he could speak, something slipped from the pocket of his worn jacket and landed on the pavement. A small silver object spun once before coming to rest between them. Caleb froze. For the first time, uncertainty crossed his face. Evelyn looked down. Her irritation vanished instantly. The color drained from her face. She bent slowly and picked up the object with trembling fingers. It was an antique silver lighter. Engraved across its surface were 3 initials. WSS William Sterling Sinclair. Her father's name. The lighter he had carried every day of his life. The lighter that had disappeared 15 years ago. Evelyn stared at the object. Then she lifted her eyes toward Caleb. The noise of the town seemed to disappear. The traffic, the wind, even the voices around them. Everything faded into silence. Because standing before her was a man she had never met. A man driving an old truck. A man her father had never mentioned. And somehow, impossibly, he was holding a piece of her father's past that should not have existed. For several long seconds, neither of them spoke. Evelyn Sterling stood in the middle of the intersection, holding the silver lighter as if it might disappear from her hands. She had searched for it after her father's death. Private investigators had searched for it. Family attorneys had searched for it. The answer had always been the same. Gone. Lost forever. Yet here it was. Not in a museum. Not in a safety deposit box. Not in the possession of a corporate executive. It had fallen from the pocket of a mechanic driving an aging pickup truck. Caleb finally extended his hand. "I should probably take that back." Evelyn tightened her grip slightly. "Where did you get this?" Her voice was quieter now. The anger was gone. In its place was something else. Curiosity, confusion, maybe even hope. Caleb hesitated. "That is a long story. Then I have time." The breeze swept across Main Street again. A nearby American flag fluttered above the courthouse steps. Cars slowly moved around the accident scene, while curious onlookers pretended not to stare. Caleb looked toward the mountains in the distance. He seemed to be weighing every word before speaking. "You should go home," Miss Sterling. Evelyn blinked. You know who I am? Caleb gave a small smile. Everyone knows who you are. Then you know I am not leaving until you answer my question. For a moment he said nothing. Then he nodded toward a small diner across the street. Redstone Diner had been there for nearly 50 years. The neon sign buzzed softly in the afternoon light. Coffee, he asked. 20 minutes later, they sat in a corner booth near the window. The smell of fresh pie and roasted coffee filled the air. A waitress topped off Caleb's mug before leaving them alone. Evelyn placed the silver lighter on the table between them. She could not stop looking at it. My father carried this everywhere, she said. I have photographs of him holding it. Caleb nodded. I know. Then how do you have it? He wrapped both hands around his coffee cup. Because he gave it to me. Evelyn immediately shook her head. No, it is the truth. My father did not give away personal items. Caleb looked down at the lighter. This one was different. Silence settled between them. Outside, the late afternoon sunlight painted long shadows across the sidewalk. Inside, the diner speakers played a quiet country song that seemed older than the building itself. Evelyn studied him carefully. There was no arrogance in his face. No sign that he was trying to impress her. If anything, he looked uncomfortable discussing the subject. How long did you know him? She asked. Caleb stared out the window for a moment. Longer than you would believe. Did you work for him? No, were you friends? Another pause. Something like that. The answer only deepened the mystery. William Sterling Sinclair had built one of the largest business empires in America. His schedule had been planned years in advance. Every meeting documented. Every relationship tracked. Yet somehow this quiet single father from a mountain town was talking about him as though they had shared ordinary conversations. Then Evelyn noticed something else. Resting near Caleb's elbow was a worn leather keychain. Attached to it was a small brass key. The initials WSS were engraved there too. Her heart skipped. One item could have been coincidence. Two could not. She slowly lifted her eyes. Who exactly were you to my father? Caleb's expression changed. Not fear. Not guilt. Something closer to sadness. He reached into his jacket and removed an old folded photograph. The edges were worn from years of handling. He slid it across the table. Evelyn picked it up. Her breath caught instantly. It showed her father standing beside a much younger Caleb nearly 15 years earlier. Both men were smiling. And written across the bottom in her father's unmistakable handwriting were 7 words that changed everything. Thank you for keeping your promise, my friend. The photograph remained between them like a doorway neither of them fully understood. Evelyn stared at her father's handwriting again and again, hoping she had somehow misread the words. But every glance brought the same conclusion. Thank you for keeping your promise, my friend. Friend. Not employee. Not contractor. Not consultant. Friend. The realization unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. William Sterling Sinclair had been admired by millions and known by thousands. But true friendship had always seemed rare in his world. This cannot be real, she whispered. Caleb nodded slowly. I understand why you would think that. My father never mentioned you. That was intentional. Evelyn looked up sharply. Intentional. Caleb leaned back in the booth. The fading sunlight reflected softly against the diner window beside him. Your father believed some things were worth protecting until the right time arrived. Protecting from who? Caleb's eyes settled on the photograph. Sometimes from the world. Sometimes from the people closest to us. The answer only created more questions. Evelyn folded her arms. You keep talking in riddles. I am trying not to break a promise. A promise to a man who has been gone for 3 years. For the first time, Caleb looked directly at her. A promise does not stop mattering because someone is no longer here. The words landed with unexpected weight. Outside, evening shadows stretched across Main Street. Inside the diner, the dinner crowd had begun to arrive. The clinking of silverware and quiet conversations created a gentle hum around them. Yet Evelyn barely noticed any of it. Her attention remained fixed on the man across the table. She opened her purse and pulled out her phone. Within seconds, she was scrolling through archived family photographs. Charity galas, award ceremonies, corporate events, vacations. Thousands of images documenting her father's life. Caleb appeared in none of them. You really were hidden, she murmured. Caleb gave a faint smile. That was never difficult. Most people overlook men like me. Something about the statement made her uncomfortable. Not because it was false. Because it was true. Before today, she probably would have walked past Caleb without remembering his face an hour later. Now she was discovering that the quiet mechanic knew parts of her father's life she had never seen. The waitress returned and refilled their coffee cups. As she walked away, Caleb glanced at his watch. His expression changed immediately. I need to go. Evelyn frowned. We are not finished. No, we are not. He stood and reached for the photograph. Then tell me where you are going. Home. That is not specific enough. For the first time all evening, Caleb laughed softly. It was not mocking. It sounded tired. Honest. I have a daughter waiting for me. Evelyn paused. You never mentioned a daughter. Lily. She is 10. Something softened in his voice when he said her name. The change was impossible to miss. Single parent? Evelyn asked. Caleb nodded. For a long time now. Another piece of the puzzle settled into place. The old truck. The repair shop. The careful way. He spoke. The absence of self-pity. He carried responsibility the way some people carried wealth. Quietly, without announcing it, Caleb reached into his jacket and removed a small card. He placed it on the table. The front contained only his name, a phone number, and the address of Hayes Auto Repair. You are giving me your information? Evelyn asked. If I intended to disappear, I would not be doing that. Then what are you doing? Caleb hesitated. His fingers brushed against the brass key hanging from his keychain. Waiting. Waiting for what? The sadness returned to his eyes. Not dramatic. Not theatrical. Just deeply human. For the day your father told me would eventually come. Evelyn stared at him. Caleb turned toward the door. Then, just before leaving, he stopped. There is something else you should know. She immediately stood. What? His voice lowered. The lighter and the photograph are only the beginning. He opened the diner door. Cool mountain air swept inside. What your father left behind is much bigger than you think. Then he walked away, leaving Evelyn alone with her untouched coffee and a question that would follow her all night. If the lighter was only the beginning, what exactly had her father trusted this man to protect for 15 years? Sleep never truly arrived that night. Evelyn Sterling lay awake in the penthouse suite overlooking downtown Denver, staring at the city lights beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Normally the view calmed her. Tonight, it only made her feel smaller. The silver lighter sat on the nightstand beside her bed. Every few minutes her eyes drifted back toward it. By 2 in the morning she finally gave up trying to rest. Wrapping a robe around her shoulders, she carried her laptop to the living room and began searching through old company archives. If Caleb Hayes had known her father for years, there had to be a record somewhere. An email, a contract, a photograph, something. The glow of the screen illuminated the quiet room as document after document appeared. Board meeting reports, financial statements, travel schedules, foundation records, thousands of pages stretching back decades. Yet Caleb's name appeared nowhere, not once. By 4:30 in the morning, frustration had replaced exhaustion. Evelyn rubbed her eyes and leaned back in her chair. Who were you? She whispered into the silence. Then she noticed something unusual. A folder buried deep inside an archive from 16 years earlier. The label was simple. Redstone Creek Project. Evelyn frowned. She clicked it open. The file contained only a handful of documents. No explanations. No summaries. Just a property survey, several photographs of an abandoned storage facility, and a single payment authorization personally signed by her father. The amount was surprisingly small, barely noticeable compared to the size of his empire. Yet he had approved it himself. That alone made it important. Evelyn enlarged one of the photographs. Her pulse quickened. Standing near the old storage building was a younger version of Caleb Hayes. The image was grainy, taken from a distance, but unmistakable. She sat upright immediately. For the first time, she had proof. Caleb had not lied. He had been connected to her father for years. The question was why. Morning arrived with a pale orange sunrise stretching across the Rockies. By 7 o'clock, Evelyn was already dressed and heading towards Sterling Industries headquarters. The 60-story glass tower dominated the Denver skyline. Employees greeted her as she entered, but she barely noticed them. Her mind remained fixed on the mysterious file. She stepped into a private elevator and rode directly to the executive floor. Within minutes, she was seated across from Harold Whitmore, the company's chief legal officer. Harold had worked alongside her father for nearly 30 years. If anyone knew the truth, it would be him. Have you ever heard of Caleb Hayes? She asked. Harold's expression remained neutral. Too neutral. Should I have? My father knew him. Your father knew thousands of people. Evelyn slid the old photograph across the desk. Harold glanced at it. Something flickered in his eyes. It lasted less than a second, but she saw it. Recognition. You know him, she said quietly. I know of him. Then tell me. Harold carefully folded his hands. Some stories are better left alone. Evelyn stared at him in disbelief. That sounds exactly like something my father would have said. Then perhaps there was wisdom in it. The answer irritated her more than she expected. She stood. I am not a child. No, Harold agreed softly. That is precisely why your father prepared for this day. Evelyn froze. The room suddenly felt smaller. Prepared. Harold immediately realized he had said too much. The color drained slightly from his face. What does that mean? She asked. He remained silent. Harold. Still nothing. Finally, he stood and walked toward the window overlooking the city. The morning sun reflected across the glass towers surrounding them. Your father believed there would come a moment when certain truths could no longer stay hidden. Evelyn's heart pounded. What truths? Harold looked out toward the horizon. The same ones Caleb Hayes has been protecting. Then he reached into a locked drawer and removed a small envelope yellowed with age. Across the front, written in her father's handwriting, were 4 simple words. For Evelyn. When the time comes. The envelope felt heavier than paper should have felt. Evelyn held it carefully, as if opening it too quickly might somehow erase whatever truth had been waiting inside for years. Harold Whitmore stood silently beside the window. He did not rush her. He did not offer explanations. The only sound in the office was the distant hum of the city far below. You have already read this? Evelyn asked. Harold shook his head. Your father gave strict instructions. It was never to be opened unless it was by you. She looked down at the familiar handwriting again. For Evelyn. When the time comes. Her father had written thousands of notes throughout his life. She recognized every curve of every letter. Suddenly, she felt 10 years old again, finding encouragement cards tucked into her school backpack before an exam. Her fingers trembled slightly as she broke the seal. Inside was a single folded page. Nothing more. No legal documents. No passwords. No financial records. Just a letter. She unfolded it slowly. My dearest Evelyn, if you are reading this, then the time I prepared for has finally arrived. I know you will have questions. I also know you will be searching for answers. There is one person you must trust. His name is Caleb Hayes. He possesses something far more valuable than money, influence, or power. He possesses the truth. Evelyn stopped reading. Her eyes widened. Harold remained silent. She continued. Years ago, I made a decision that changed many lives, including my own. Caleb helped me carry that burden when very few people would have. If circumstances unfold as I expect, you will discover that not every legacy can be measured on a balance sheet. Some are measured by promises kept. Some are measured by character. Trust Caleb. Listen before you judge. The rest will be revealed when you find the place we called the harbor. Evelyn lowered the letter. The harbor? Harold slowly turned away from the window. I was afraid that would be mentioned. What is it? I do not know. You are lying. Harold sighed. I know very little. Your father was extremely protective of anything connected to that name. Evelyn walked toward the desk. Then find out. I have tried. For how long? Harold hesitated. Nearly 15 years. The answer stunned her. 15 years. The exact same period connected to Caleb. Connected to the lighter. Connected to the photograph. Connected to the storage facility in Redstone Creek. Suddenly, all of the pieces seemed connected by invisible threads. Before she could ask another question, her phone vibrated. A text message appeared on the screen. The sender was unknown. Meet me at Hayes Auto Repair. Come alone. If you want answers, bring the letter. Evelyn stared at the message. Who is it? Harold asked. She showed him the screen. His expression darkened immediately. Do not go. Why? Because someone else knows you opened that envelope. A chill moved through her. How is that possible? Harold looked genuinely concerned now. Because only 3 people ever knew that letter existed. Evelyn's heartbeat quickened. My father, you, and Caleb. Harold slowly nodded. Which means someone has been watching this story unfold long before either of us realized it. Outside the office windows, clouds began gathering. Over the distant mountains. The bright morning sunlight faded behind a blanket of gray. Evelyn looked once more at her father's letter. Trust Caleb. Listen before you judge. For the first time since the accident, she stopped questioning whether Caleb was telling the truth. The real question had become far more unsettling. Who else knew about the secret her father had hidden all those years ago? And why were they suddenly stepping out of the shadows now? The drive to Redstone Creek felt longer than it had the day before. Gray clouds drifted across the mountains, casting shadows over the winding roads as Evelyn followed the directions toward Hayes Auto Repair. Her father's letter rested on the passenger seat beside her. Every few minutes she glanced at it, replaying the words in her mind. Trust Caleb. Listen before you judge. The message felt less like advice now and more like a warning. When she arrived, the repair shop looked exactly as she remembered. 3 service bays, a faded blue sign, a line of pickup trucks waiting for routine maintenance. Nothing about the place suggested secrets worth protecting for 15 years. Yet something about it felt different now. More important, more connected to her father than any corporate office she had ever entered. Caleb was standing outside when she pulled into the gravel lot. He looked unsurprised to see her, almost as if he had known she would come. You got the letter, he said. Evelyn stepped out of her car. How did you know? Caleb wiped his hands on a shop towel. Because your father told me exactly what would happen if certain events ever started moving. Then the text message came from you. No, his answer was immediate. I never sent any message. Evelyn felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Then someone else knew about the envelope. Caleb nodded slowly. That is what worries me. For a moment neither spoke. The distant sound of wind rustled through the pine trees surrounding the property. Somewhere nearby, a train horn echoed across the valley. Caleb glanced toward the garage office. Come inside. The office was small and modest. Family photographs lined one wall. Most featured a smiling blonde girl with bright blue eyes. Lily. In one picture she sat on Caleb's shoulders during a 4th of July parade. In another she held a fishing pole almost taller than herself. The images carried a warmth that money could never purchase. She seems happy, Evelyn said quietly. Caleb smiled. She is the best part of every day. The answer reminded her of something her father used to say. For a brief moment the similarity unsettled her. Caleb walked to a filing cabinet in the corner. He unlocked the bottom drawer and pulled out a worn manila folder. The edges were frayed from age. He set it carefully on the desk. This is where it started, he said. Evelyn looked down at the folder. What is it? Proof. Caleb opened it. Inside were dozens of photographs, handwritten notes, receipts, and newspaper clippings. None involved business deals. None involved corporate acquisitions. Instead, they showed families, children, small homes, local schools, community centers, ordinary people. What am I looking at? Evelyn asked. Caleb turned one photograph toward her. It showed her father standing beside a newly built playground surrounded by laughing children. She had never seen the image before. Your father paid for that project, Caleb said. Quietly. Another photograph appeared. Then another. Food programs, housing assistance, medical expenses, scholarships, hundreds of lives, hundreds of stories, none connected to the Sterling name. Why was all of this hidden? Evelyn whispered. Caleb's expression grew serious. Because your father never wanted recognition. That cannot be the whole reason. It is not. He reached beneath the stack and removed a small brass key attached to a faded tag. Across the tag, written in black ink, was a single word. Harbor. Evelyn stared at it. The room suddenly felt very still. Caleb placed the key in her hand. Everything changes after we open the door this belongs to. The key felt cold in Evelyn's palm as she followed Caleb out of the repair shop. Dark clouds continued gathering above the mountains, painting the afternoon sky in shades of silver and gray. Neither of them spoke for several moments. Some truths arrived with noise. Others arrived with silence. This felt like the second kind. Caleb climbed into his old truck while Evelyn followed behind in her Bentley. They drove west through Redstone Creek, passing ranches, open fields, and narrow roads that seemed untouched by time. The farther they traveled, the farther the modern world appeared to disappear. 20 minutes later, they reached the edge of a wooded valley hidden behind a line of towering pine trees. Caleb parked beside a weathered chain-link fence. Beyond it stood an old brick warehouse. The building looked abandoned. Dust covered the windows. Ivy climbed the walls. Yet the structure felt strangely cared for, as though someone had been quietly watching over it for years. Evelyn stepped out and looked around. This is the harbor? Caleb nodded. At least that is what your father called it. What is inside? Caleb glanced toward the building. The reason he trusted me. They walked together through the gate. Gravel crunched beneath their feet. Wind moved softly through the trees. Somewhere overhead, a hawk circled against the darkening sky. Reaching the entrance, Caleb stepped aside. You should open it. Evelyn looked down at the brass key. Her heartbeat quickened. She inserted it into the lock. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then came a soft click. The heavy door slowly opened inward. Dust floated through beams of fading sunlight. The air smelled faintly of old wood and paper. Evelyn expected to find records. Perhaps financial documents. Hidden investments. Some forgotten corporate secret. Instead, she froze. The warehouse contained hundreds of shelves. Every shelf was filled with boxes. Every box carried a handwritten label. Family assistance. Scholarship fund. Medical recovery. Veterans support. Community housing. Youth programs. The rows seemed endless. What is all this? She whispered. Caleb walked forward carefully. Your father's real legacy. Evelyn stared in disbelief. She opened the nearest box. Inside were letters. Hundreds of letters. Handwritten thank you notes from families across the country. Some included photographs. Others included children's drawings. One letter described how a stranger had paid for life-saving medical treatment. Another described a scholarship that helped a young woman become a teacher. None of the letters mentioned William Sterling Sinclair by name. Every act had been anonymous. Every gift had been hidden. Tears began forming in Evelyn's eyes before she realized it. Why did he never tell anyone? She asked quietly. Caleb picked up a letter from a nearby shelf. Because he believed kindness mattered more when it expected nothing in return. Evelyn slowly walked deeper into the warehouse. Every shelf revealed another story. Another life changed. Another family helped. The scale was impossible to comprehend. Her father had spent decades building a business empire. Yet this place held something entirely different. Something personal. Something human. Then she noticed a door at the far end of the warehouse. Unlike everything else, it appeared newer. Protected. Intentional. Above it hung a small brass plaque. Her breath caught immediately. The plaque contained only 3 words. Final instructions room. Caleb's expression changed the moment he saw it. That should not be open. Evelyn followed his gaze. The door stood slightly ajar. Only an inch. Barely noticeable. Yet enough. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. You said nobody knew about this place. Very few people did. Then who opened that door? Caleb did not answer immediately. The silence itself became an answer. Someone else had been here. Recently. Someone who knew exactly where to look. Slowly, Caleb stepped toward the room. Then he stopped. On the floor near the doorway lay a small object. Evelyn bent down and picked it up. Her face went pale. It was a modern security badge from Sterling Industries. And printed across the front was the name of one of the company's current board members. The badge felt impossibly heavy despite weighing almost nothing. Evelyn turned it over in her hand while a cold uneasiness settled over the warehouse. The name printed across the front belonged to Martin Graves, one of Sterling Industries' longest-serving board members. He had attended family holidays. He had spoken at her father's memorial service. He had spent years presenting himself as one of the company's most loyal leaders. Yet somehow his security badge was lying on the floor inside a hidden room that almost nobody knew existed. That is not possible, Evelyn whispered. Caleb's jaw tightened. Unfortunately, it is. The wind outside rattled softly against the warehouse walls. For a moment, neither moved. Then Caleb slowly pushed open the door to the final instructions room. The hinges groaned quietly. Inside was a much smaller space than the main warehouse. Unlike the dusty shelves outside, this room appeared carefully organized. A large wooden desk sat against one wall. Filing cabinets lined another. Framed photographs rested on shelves. At the center of the room stood an old television monitor connected to a media player. Evelyn's eyes immediately settled on it. What is this place? Caleb stepped forward. The last part of your father's plan. They entered cautiously. Nothing appeared damaged. Nothing seemed stolen. Yet the slightly open door and Martin Graves' badge suggested someone had been here recently. Caleb checked several drawers. Everything appeared untouched. Then he noticed a small red light blinking beneath the television monitor. That was not on before, he said quietly. Evelyn looked over. What does it mean? Caleb pressed a button. The screen flickered to life. Static briefly appeared before the image stabilized. Evelyn's breath caught instantly. Her father appeared on the screen, older than she remembered. His hair carried more gray. His face showed signs of age and responsibility. Yet his eyes remained exactly the same. Warm, steady, kind. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. "Dad," she whispered. William Sterling Sinclair smiled gently into the camera. "If you are watching this, then several things have happened exactly as I expected." Caleb lowered his eyes respectfully. The room fell silent. "Evelyn," the recording continued, "there are truths I never shared while I was alive. Not because I lacked trust in you, but because timing matters. Some lessons must arrive when the heart is ready to hear them." Tears formed in Evelyn's eyes. She stepped closer to the screen. "For most of my life, the world believed my greatest achievement was building a company. They were wrong." William smiled softly. The company was never the legacy. The people were. Images appeared beside him. Families, children, schools, community centers, faces from the warehouse outside. Every person you see represents a story. Every story represents a promise. Evelyn wiped away tears. Her father continued. "Years ago, I learned a difficult truth. Wealth can solve problems, but it cannot replace character. Money can build buildings, but it cannot build trust. That is why I chose Caleb Hayes." The camera angle shifted slightly. "Caleb never asked me for anything. Not once. He never wanted recognition. He never wanted reward. He simply believed that helping people was the right thing to do." Caleb looked away, visibly uncomfortable hearing the praise. William smiled again. "When you find this room, I need you to understand something. The greatest danger to any legacy is not failure. It is forgetting why it existed in the first place." Then his expression became serious. "If Martin Graves has already found this room, events are unfolding faster than I hoped." Evelyn froze. Caleb immediately looked at the screen. "There are documents hidden inside the third cabinet behind my desk," William continued. "They explain everything. The truth about the harbor, the truth about the board, and the reason I trusted Caleb with my final promise." The screen briefly flickered. Then William spoke one final sentence that changed everything. "Because 15 years ago, Caleb saved something far more valuable than my company. He saved my daughter." The room fell completely silent after the recording ended. The television screen faded to black, but neither Evelyn nor Caleb moved. The final words echoed through the warehouse like a bell that refused to stop ringing. "He saved my daughter." Evelyn slowly turned toward Caleb. Her eyes searched his face, looking for answers that suddenly felt far more personal than corporate secrets or hidden documents. "What did he mean?" she asked softly. Caleb lowered his gaze. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he walked toward the third cabinet behind the desk. Using a small key hidden beneath a drawer, he unlocked it and pulled out a single file. The folder was thinner than Evelyn expected. Caleb handed it to her without speaking. Inside she found newspaper clippings from nearly 15 years earlier. One article described a severe winter storm that had stranded dozens of travelers on a mountain highway outside Redstone Creek. Another mentioned a rescue effort organized by local volunteers. Then she saw a photograph. Her breath caught. The image showed a frightened young girl wrapped in a blanket beside a younger Caleb Hayes. The girl was 12 years old. The girl was her. Memories she had not thought about in years came rushing back. A school trip, bad weather, confusion, fear. She remembered becoming separated from the group during the storm. She remembered a kind stranger helping her reach safety. She remembered a warm truck, a calm voice, and someone reassuring her that everything would be okay until her father arrived. Tears filled her eyes. "That was you," she whispered. Caleb nodded. "Your father never forgot that day." Evelyn looked down at the photograph again. She had forgotten the man's face over the years. Her father never had. Suddenly everything made sense. The friendship, the trust, the promise. It had never begun with business. It had begun with kindness. Quiet, ordinary kindness. The kind that changed lives without asking for recognition. Caleb pointed toward another document inside the file. "Read the last page." Evelyn unfolded a handwritten letter from her father. "My dear Evelyn, if you have reached this point, then you finally understand why I trusted Caleb. The world will tell you that success comes from power, influence, and wealth. They are wrong. Character is the only investment that never loses value. 15 years ago, a good man helped my daughter without knowing who she was. He expected nothing in return. That is the kind of person worth trusting with a legacy. If you wish to honor me, continue what we started here. Not for publicity, not for applause, simply because it is the right thing to do. Evelyn wiped away tears as she finished reading. Outside, the storm clouds had begun to break apart. Late afternoon, sunlight streamed through the warehouse windows, illuminating the shelves filled with thousands of lives touched by her father's hidden generosity. For the first time, she understood what the harbor truly was. It was not a secret location. It was not a collection of documents. It was a place built to protect compassion. A place where promises mattered more than profits. A place where dignity lived quietly. Evelyn looked at Caleb. The old truck. The repair shop. The years of silence. Suddenly none of it seemed ordinary. "Thank you," she said. Caleb smiled gently. "For what?" She glanced around the warehouse. "For keeping your promise when nobody was watching." Caleb looked toward the shelves and photographs surrounding them. Then he gave the same answer her father might have given. Some promises are worth keeping. The wind outside grew still. Sunlight filled the room. And for the first time in many years, the daughter of a billionaire and the single father her father trusted most stood together in complete silence, not because there was nothing left to say, but because the truth had finally spoken for itself.